Stitchers. I'm Amy. I'm the Globetrotting Stitcher. Very happy to be back with you again today. I hope you've all been well. We have had quite a busy start to the year. There's been a lot going on over the last couple of weeks. First of all, we're getting to the end of January as we're filming this, and I could tell you when I went back to work, I always have this like dream of going back to work after the holiday break and like just gently easing into the year and slowly ramping up to the normal state of busyness. And every year that dream does not happen. And it certainly is not happening this year. So it's been a very busy few weeks at work for me. It's just my days have felt extremely full. And so it's been a little bit of a rough awakening. But probably of more interest to you is that he's doing fine now, but Bear was really, really sick last week. We were really worried about him. So we were mentioning in our last video that we had some friends who were coming to stay and visit, and so they did, and we had a great time with them. And a day or two after they left, Bear was, he just was not himself. Like, he wouldn't eat. He was just super lethargic. It was obvious that something was wrong with him. He was panting a lot, and like he felt hot to the touch. And so we called the vet, and they fit him in. And it's a good thing that they did, because when we got him in there and they took his temperature, he had a fever of 106.6, which is really high for a dog. So the vet was telling us, here's the normal healthy range that we feel okay with if we see this when a dog comes in. And she said, Bear is like, if his fever goes any higher, it could cause organ damage. Like, he was so sick. She was just like, I cannot send you home until I can get his fever to start coming down. Like, I need to see this improve before I send him home. So like they put a fan on him. They were like putting the little water packets, like the whatever it is, like where they put water under their skin, the subcutaneous fluids, and like doing like steroids and all this other stuff, trying to get his fever down. So thankfully they succeeded in getting it down enough that they felt like they could send him home, even though he still had a fever and he was still pretty sick, quite sick actually. And then the next day he was still running about a high fever. So they had to do more fluids. And anyway, so he just finished his antibiotics this morning. He was on a bunch of different pills, and he's finally like, back to normal in that sense. Like he's feeling much better, but man, it was really scary. And, so thankfully he's good, but it's been kind of like getting Bear healthy. It just took him it felt like it took him a long time to improve. We definitely saw gradual improvement, but it took several days for us to see Bear start being Bear again. So anyway, that's been kind of all consuming or heavily consuming the last week or so. Other than that, we are doing pretty well. As I said, we're coming here to the end of January on the day that we're filming this. And it's hard to believe. I know a lot of people feel like January lasts for 100 years. For me, January always feels like it flies by, and then February drags. So far, things are, that's how it's feeling this year for me at least, but we'll see how it goes next month. So enough about life stuff. Let's get into stitching stuff. So we've got a couple finishes to show you. One is a fully finished object, and then the other is just a regular finish. So we'll start with our fully finished object. So those of you who watch us regularly may remember that I finished Faith of the Heart by Brenda Gervais from With Thy Needle and Thread toward the end of last year. This was a piece that I stitched on a piece of 36 count Strauss linen by Color and Cotton, and I used most of the called for flosses, but I did make a few substitutions here and there. So I've been kind of getting up early in the morning to do some fully finishing, to work on some framing and things like that, just because things tend to be busy. So I try and do a little bit before work for a few minutes. And so I've been able to get this one done. So here's how it turned out. And I'm quite pleased with it. So I did frame it myself, mounted it myself, and then put it here in this nice frame. I really like, this is actually a really similar frame to the one that is used in the cover photo for the chart. I think it's slightly different, but quite similar. And I think it just really suits this piece quite well. I'm really pleased with it. And I actually have put it on the wall already in our dining room and have been enjoying it in there for the last day or so. This will probably ultimately become more of a design that comes out in the autumn, just because of the concentration of the more autumnal oranges and rust kind of colors that are on here. But for now, it's not so explicitly autumnal that I can't kind of have it out and enjoying it right now. So I think it's really pretty. So that is my full finish on Faith of the Heart by With Thy Needle and Thread. Oops. All right. The next finish is not mine, but Gary's. So Gary, over to you.
All right. Well, I was working on Women Who Behaves, which is a Sue Hillis design. Stitched it on 16 count rock salt Aida and used all the called for colors. Not a single change, all of the ones that it said to use. Anyway, the last time you saw this, I think I don't even know where I was the last time you saw this. I think I did a little bit more work on the hat, but hadn't gotten to the face or anything like that. But since then, I have actually finished it. So this is what it looks like finished. The face was really interesting because I'll just show you what I mean. These pictures are of what the face looks like with and without backstitch. Once you put the backstitch in, it really stands out. I know I made that a point several times in different videos that we made, but it is pretty. It's pretty striking, the difference between that face after and before. The other thing I would say about it is that there's a charm on it, and it's just a steering wheel, not a steering wheel, but a ship's wheel. The charm that came with it was a pair of handcuffs, but they looked really modern. They looked like they were from like the late 19th century or something like that. I don't know. Didn't seem like right for the pirate age. So we just got a bag of charms. Now we have like 97 other charms. And we put the wheel on there. So that's finished. We believe we have a frame picked out. So, we'll frame it, and then we'll call it an FFO, which is fully finished. What is that? Object, yes, for those that don't know. Anyway, so yeah, it's done. So that's that. I guess we'll be talking about my other one later on.
It's been really fun to see Gary, finishing this one off. Hang on, I'm gonna have to bend down. All right. All right, so that's it for finishes for this time. But we do have some whips to show you, so we'll move on to those. So the first thing I'm going to show you that I've been working on is my full coverage design. As many of you know, I have been stitching Rose Trellis In by Heaven and Earth Designs for the last several years. I'm now almost another month or so, probably actually about 2 months away from starting the 5th year of working on this design. So it's been a long-term project, but I made really good progress on it. So I'm stitching this piece 2/1 using a combination of half stitch and continental stitch on a piece of 28 count white Lugana. So the last time you saw this design, I was very close to finishing off the 4th row of pages. So I had finished all of the stitching on page 22, and then pages 23 and 24. So page 24 is like just, essentially one column of stitches. And so I was close to the bottom on both of those pages. I had finished stitching in, I think most of the last of the columns on the front porch of the house, had finished the siding on the front porch of the house, and had almost finished a lot of the stitching in the background. There's this really pretty like bush tree kind of thing that's got purple flowers in it. So here's where it is right now. So as you can see, I did finish that 4th row of pages. So pages 23 and 24 are totally finished now. And I began working on the 5th row of pages. And I really, really enjoyed working on this week. So what you're seeing coming in down here, what I found exciting about it, it's a relatively small element in the broader scheme of the design, but it feels like it's a significant element because this is the rose trellis that the rose trellis inn, I assume, is named for. So you've got this kind of trellis shape coming in with kind of a gateway through it, and then little climbing roses that are trailing up and onto that rose trellis. So you can see I worked on that, worked on more background, filled in a little bit more of the pink siding here. So I've made some good progress in filling in down that section of the design. One of the things that was nice is that I have reached at least 1 or 2 stitches down here that are sprinkled along the bottom that are at the bottom of this page. I still have a ways to go to actually finish that whole page and continue moving across the design. But for me, it was really exciting to see. I've just been looking forward to seeing that element come in. And so it was really fun to get to work on it this time. One of the things that you can't really clearly see this time around, because there are still hanging threads covering it, but there's a kind of a block of white here that is not really filled in yet. But the eagle-eyed might be able to tell that there's a distinct shape to that block of white. And that is, there's a little unicorn that's poking its head out from behind the inn, and you can just see that in here. So the next time this comes out to be worked on, that unicorn will get stitched in, and so you should be seeing it really clearly then. But for me, again, it was just really fun to kind of work on this piece, get to a whole new set of pages and a whole new kind of area of focus. So having a lot of fun working on this one. All right. The next WIP that I have to share with you is my sampler. So I am working on Die Farben Venedig. It's by Historische Stickmuster. And I am stitching this on a piece of 36 count cream and sugar linen by Fiber on a Whim. And I'm using all of the called for Soie d'Alger silks. So the last time you saw this piece, it was a brand new start. I started this one the week before Christmas. And because it was such an incredibly busy week, as the week before Christmas is for so many of us, I only had very few stitches in. So the design is comprised of, it's like 9 rectangles of these kind of, I would call them Baroque, maybe, sort of blocks with different motifs in them. It's really a beautiful design. And so I had started in the block of stitching that's up in the top left corner of the design, which is where I usually start my new pieces. But I, despite my best efforts, had not even been able to finish that block of stitching. So here's where I am right now. So as you can see, I have now finished this whole block of stitching, this kind of blue with the brown and the cream. I think it's very pretty, really happy with how that's turned out. Then got this little medallion in here that separates the various blocks from one another. And I've started working on this gold brown silk that's this next, kind of the base of this next block of stitching. So this one has been really enjoyable to work on. I will say it does, this is essentially, these blocks are full coverage, not essentially, they are full coverage blocks. And so it does tend to be very dense stitching. It does move a little bit slowly, not at all unpleasant to work on. There's just enough variation in here that to me, I didn't find it dull or tedious because of it being block stitching. It's just a little bit slower moving for whatever reason. And I think it's because those blocks are all, totally covered, total full coverage. So anyway, I'm really loving how this is coming out and very much enjoying working on it. All right. The next piece we are going to talk to you about is Gary's WIP.
I clearly did not see that coming. So I'm working on Louis Armstrong, and once I find my notes, because I seem to not want to commit this to memory, but at any rate, there's only like 3 lines. I don't know why. Anyway, it's Louis Armstrong. It's by Jules Designs. Yeah, sorry, I think I gave the Louis Armstrong information for Women Who Behave, but we're not going to change that. Anyway, so this one is Louis Armstrong. It's by Stitching Jewels Designs, and it's stitched on 16 white, 16 count white Ada with black DMC. Anyway, just for clarity, Women Who Behave, that's by Sue Hillis Designs, in case I didn't say that. Anyway, so the last time that you saw this, I had not made any progress on it since the last time that you had seen it. But in between those two times, I realized that I'm a monogamous stitcher. We'll just leave it there. So I went ahead and finished the Women Who Behave. And this is where we are now with Louis Armstrong. Anyway, if I look over there, it's like right over there. This is really cool because like for the longest time, it just looked like this weird blotch of black and white on this thing. But now it's actually starting to look like, I don't know the parts of a trumpet, but it looks like the horn part of the trumpet is done. So I'm actually on page 6, right? So it's page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I didn't want to do all the top ones and then find out that something wasn't aligned right later on. So I'm doing page 1 and then page 6, page 2, and then page 7, so that if there is something wrong, I can fix it before I get way down to the other end. Anyway, so that's where I am on that. There'll probably be a lot more progress on this because now I don't feel like I have 2 projects to finish. I feel like only 1. So that's where I am. Somebody asked a question, but I think we have a question and answer session, which is good because I don't remember what the question was. So anyway, so that's where I am on Louis Armstrong.
Oh my God.
I know, what's going on? How does she say it? Words escape me. Anyway, so yeah, that's where I am.
All right, so that does it for our whips today. I do have one more project to show you, and that is a new start. And I debated about whether to even show you this because, y'all, this is like the saddest of new starts, maybe in the history of sad new starts. So I did take a few minutes the other day to kind of put a few stitches in on a piece that I have been waiting to get started on for a while, and I've needed to get a new project started in my travel category. So I have exactly 11 stitches to show you. But what I have started is the final pillow in the set of Christmas Cheer Pin Pillows by Jeanette Douglas Designs. If you've been watching us for a while, you know that I have been, over the last year or so, working my way through all 6 of the designs in that chart pack. And 5 of them are done, and so now I am starting the final one. This is the 'Tis the Season pillow, and I am stitching this one just like all of the others on a piece of 36 count Stars Hollow Blend linen by R&R Reproductions, using all the called for flosses. So if you aren't sitting down, you may want to sit down because you're going to be blown away by this amazing start. So here's my 11 stitches on the first part of the border on this design. Obviously not a rip-roaring start, but it is now started. I feel good about that. And I think once you have a project started, it's always a little easier to kind of come back to it and continue working away on it. So hopefully you'll be seeing more progress on this in the next couple of videos, but for right now, at least it's gotten started. So that is the 'Tis the Season pillow in the Christmas Cheer Pin Pillows collection.
You got a lot done.
You hush. So I don't have any haul to share with you this time. I've been trying to avoid shopping since we did pretty well for ourselves at Christmas when it came to stitchy goodness. But we did, as Gary mentioned, we did have a couple of questions that have come in, one for him and one for me. So the question for Gary came in from DP. And to give a little context before I read the question, in our last video, I was sharing with you the summary of my 2023 stitching numbers, you know, how many starts, how many finishes, how many stitches, and so on. And so DP wanted to know, what about Gary's numbers? Gary?
Oh, well, great segue.
Thank you.
Well done. Anyway,
Don't show the people this side of you, Gary.
I shan't. What is it? I don't know. Three. Let's just go with three. I have no idea. I can tell you this much, though. I started doing this about maybe 2.5 to 3 years ago, something in that range. And I think I just completed my 7th piece. And 3 of them have been given away. And I've got 3 of them on the wall upstairs. So there's that. I think for 2023, I might have finished, I know I finished Captain America, but I'm not sure what else I finished. As far as stitch counts, I don't know, man. I'm just putting it where they tell me to put it. I'm not doing a database thing. I mean, it's cool she does that. I love databases, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. So just 3. I've done 3 stitches on 7 projects in 2023. No, I don't know. It's a big number though. Bigger than a little number.
That was very precise. All right. So the other question came from AJ, and AJ asked, how do you decide what category a pattern belongs in? Do you have guidelines? So I don't have any like hard and fast guidelines, but I thought this was a really good question because I do have a rotation, and in that rotation is made up of different like categories of stitching. So full coverage, obviously that's pretty self-explanatory. It's full coverage. The sampler category is one of the more somewhat more variable. So the way I treat the sampler category is I treat it a little bit more loosely than a truly pure definition of what a sampler, what qualifies as a sampler. So obviously the sampler category, kind of the way that I think about what fits into that, obviously, your classic vintage sampler. But then I also think about things and other things that I've kind of stitched in the sampler category that can include, your traditional historic sampler. It can include a Quaker sampler. It can include like a band sampler, anything kind of like that. But I also have found that I tend to stitch things that kind of are maybe not truly samplers, but they're a little bit more primitive in style. And those of you, again, who watch us on a regular basis know that I definitely don't lean in too heavily as far as my preferred kind of stitching and aesthetic. I don't lean in real heavily on that really primitive style. I kind of like sort of your primitive light. So things more like Plum Street samplers or with thy needle and thread, where you've got that flavor, but it's not like really, really primitive. So things that tend toward being more primitive, but that maybe don't have all of the elements of a classic primitive sampler, I will still kind of sometimes fit that into the sampler category. So that's how I think about samplers, or that category. Fancy Lady, again, I think that one's fairly self-explanatory. There are some pieces that I kind of, in my own, my database, where I've kind of categorized what part of the rotation a chart might fit into. I have a few that I've categorized as fancy ladies that may not truly be fancy ladies in the purest sense of the word, but it's definitely like a humanoid that is dressed in something beautiful, in case that's helpful. So yeah, I think fancy lady is for the most part pretty clear what fits into that. Seasonal, again, is, very flexible. It can be any kind of a seasonal chart. I do tend toward, if I'm going to put something in a seasonal category, you guys, I'm sorry, you probably can't hear this. I don't know if the mic is picking it up, but Sophie's having a dream back here behind me, and she's making little wuffles. So if you hear that, she's okay. Anyway, it's very cute. So anyway, in my seasonal category, I do have a tendency to track to very specific holidays or seasonal themes. So it's Christmas, winter, Valentine's Day, Easter, spring, autumn, and summer. I don't do a lot of Halloween. I've got maybe a couple of Halloween charts in my stash, and I don't have, I enjoy Halloween. I just don't It's not like a really meaningful holiday for me, and it's not one I decorate for. I just go straight from summer into autumn. So I tend not to do a lot of like Halloween stitching, although I really enjoy watching others do Halloween stitching. But anyway, so if a chart clearly is, and it can be any style, it can be cute, it can be a little bit primitive, it can be whatever. But if a chart definitely has a seasonal vibe that aligns with kind of one of those sort of seasonal categories, then it can go in my seasonal rotation. So that one's probably the most flexible and broad, aside from Wildcard. And Wildcard is called Wildcard because I created that category as a way of making sure that I had a space to stitch things that didn't clearly fit into one of the other categories, or pieces that were maybe really large. So I do tend on my seasonal stitches to only do small or medium designs, so that I can cycle through and have more finishes, because that's where I tend to get my finishes most quickly. So my wild card tends to be something that's not clearly aligned with a season or one of the other categories of stitching, or something that might fit into one of the other categories, but is a bigger chart that's going to require more time to do. So hopefully that's helpful in clarifying how I think about my rotation and my the different categories, but always happy to answer questions if you have more. So I think that kind of wraps it up for us today. This should be a fairly short video for us. But we'll wrap up by telling you what we're going to be working on over the next couple of weeks. So we're filming this a little bit earlier in kind of the rotation timeline than we normally would. So I actually have another couple of days to continue working on De Farbe in Venedig, which I should have mentioned earlier, translates in English to The Colors of Venice. I'll be working on that one for a couple more days, and then we'll put that back into the whip pile. So we'll see how far I can get on that. After that, I am going to spend a week working on Rose of Sharon, which was a new start for me last month as well. And so looking forward to getting back to that and seeing if we can make some really great progress. And then I will spend a week working on my current seasonal stitch, which is Joyful Song by Samplers Not Forgotten. I'm really hoping I'm close enough on that one that I think I can push it to a finish. So very much looking forward to having time on that and hoping I have a finish to show you on that the next time we film an update. Other than that, I'm also hoping to get some time on my weekend stitch, which is Butterfly Port Mauve. So we'll see how far we get. And of course, my travel stitch, my blazing new start. And then, as Gary has said, he'll be working on Louis Armstrong. So I think that does it for us. We hope all of you are doing well. We hope you're enjoying your stitching. We hope that 2024 is treating you well so far and continues to do so. As always, we say, if you like our videos, we hope you'll give us a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber, please do consider subscribing. Feel free to share your comments. We do enjoy reading those. And you can send us email between videos to globetrottingstitcher@gmail.com. Or you can follow me on Instagram, where I post semi-periodic updates on my progress on some of my whips. And on Instagram, I'm globetrotting_stitcher. So we'll look forward to seeing you soon. And in the meantime, take care and happy stitching. Bye-bye.